Hi everybody, this is Joe with 10 Minute Tech, and today we're going to be going over lesson 3, and that's going to be a live demonstration of creating an Azure network. Very quickly, just a few quick slides. I'm going to be using the Azure Resource Manager to create this network and not the Azure Classic portal. Okay, what we're going to cover is we are going to create an Azure Virtual Network. We're going to create a front end and a back end subnet, and we're going to set some IP addresses, and we're going to deploy a virtual machine. So I already mentioned that this is being done using Azure Resource Manager, so let's get on with it. Now I've gone ahead and created a resource group called Virtual Network 01 for what we'll be creating in this lab. And as you can see, there's nothing in it, right? Let's go ahead and click on it directly, and you can see there is nothing in it. It's a little boring, nothing in there. And now we're going to add something. So we're going to click on Create a Resource. So it's going to bring it up, and in here you'll see down here that there are a lot of different things that you can do, that you can create. You can search here for anything that you would like to create, but in this instance virtual network is what we want, and it's presented itself right here. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to check this out, and again, Classic versus Resource Manager. We're going to be using the Resource Manager, and I'm going to click Create. Alright, so I'm going to give our network the name of Production. And I am going to give it an IP address range of 192.168.1.24. Choose your subscription. We're going to put it into an existing resource group, which is our Virtual Network 1. We're going to go ahead and let it be created in the East US. This is the other part of this, is that when you create a network, it is mandatory that you create at least one subnet. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create this front end subnet, and we're going to give it an address range of 192.168.1.0.29. And this IP address range will provide us with 8 addresses. And again, that's what we think, because that's what the subnet tells it. But there's going to be something we'll see here in a little bit that's going to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this to the dashboard. As a habit, I like to do that. And we're going to go ahead and get it created. So you can see there it is being deployed. It'll take about 30 seconds or so. So once the virtual network is created, it will automatically open. Conversely, you could come over to the dashboard here, and as I said, I like to pin things to the dashboard, so you could click here and you could also get to it. You could also go to the resource group and click in Virtual Networks 01, and then in here you would see that there is the production network. We can come down here and we can click on subnet, and we can see that there is our front end subnet. But what's this right here? 3 addresses? I thought we were going to have 8 addresses. Well, here's what happens. Azure will take the very first and very last IP address for internal services. It then takes 3 other IP addresses for other internal services. So that's a total of 5 IP addresses from every subnet that Azure will take. This is where planning becomes very important, because if you're not aware of that, say that you needed all 8 of those addresses, you would have to go back in and redo your subnetting. But for right now, we're going to keep going forward with this. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to create the backend subnet. So we'll come in here. So we're going to call this backend. I'm going to leave everything else exactly the same. And we'll click OK. So this will take a second or so for it to generate. And there we have it. The backend subnet has been created. Now notice here we thought we were going to have 16 addresses, but we only have 11. So again, that goes to show you that 5 addresses that Azure will automatically take. Now let's say that we want to go in and we want to fix the front end subnet, right? Because we need more addresses than 3. So we can come into here, into the subnet itself, and then we can make a change. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to a 26. And you can see there I get an error. And what is the error that I get? The specific address space overlaps with the subnet backend, which is in a range of 192.168.1.16/28. So I can't do this. I can't do this because, let's go back, this backend subnet has the addresses that the front end subnet is now being configured for. So they're overlapping, and you can't have that. And again, this goes back to why it's so important to plan ahead. So the only way to fix this is to delete the subnet, and you can see there We'll do a refresh, and that backend subnet is gone. Now I'm going to go into the front end subnet, and we'll make our change. You can see how many addresses we had. It's 26. And we're going to have 59 addresses plus the 5 that Azure has reserved for itself. And we hit save. Saved, we give it a close, and we go back, do a refresh, and you'll see we have the 59 addresses that are available. So I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to recreate my backend subnet. I'm going to leave everything else at default and click OK, and now you see we don't have any problems. There's nothing overlapping now. So that was a review of how to create a network and a front-end back-end subnet, and also some demonstrations on the importance of planning, especially when it comes to your subnets and the IP address ranges that you'll be using. So our next and final part of this demonstration is deploying a virtual machine into the virtual network. Now I'm going to be doing this manually using Resource Manager to do it. There's a lot more powerful ways to do this, much more efficient by using PowerShell scripts or JSON templates. But for the purpose of this demonstration, it's better to just walk through this manually. So let's deploy a virtual machine. So I'm already in the resource group with Virtual Network 1, and there was the production network that we just created. And so to add the machine, I'm going to click here. And again, you can search here, or you can click on if it's presented. So in this case, this is the Windows server that I want, database server or data center server 2016. Click there, make sure that I've got Resource Manager created, and click Create. That's going to go through and ask me for some base configurations. So I'm pretty much going to leave everything here as the standard. I'm going to name this DC because it's going to be a domain controller. I'm going to leave the disk types the same, put in an admin user and a password. It all checks out. Choose my subscription. What resource group do I want to put it in? I'm going to put it in Virtual Network 1, and it's in the East. I do not have my own licenses, so I will not be bringing those. That certainly is an option. If you have an enterprise level agreement or something with Microsoft, you can discuss with them about bringing your own licenses and using this. All right, so now I'm going to click OK. It's going to go through and check things out. Then I'm going to check a size. So because this is just this demonstration, I'm going to choose the cheapest one that I can. So that will be this DS1V2 standard. It's got one CPU, 3.5 gigs of RAM, 4 disks, and you can see the rest of it there. And we'll select that. All right, so the next thing we're going to be talking about is this an availability set, and for this demo we're not going to talk about that, although we will be dealing with availability sets later when we do load balancing. I am going to use managed disks. We're not going to talk about that right now either. We will get into that later. So this network is next. So we've already chosen production, and there is the front end subnet. We do not want the front end subnet. We want the back end subnet. So we'll change that. Public IP address I'm going to leave the same, and now I know what you're saying. You shouldn't have a public IP address on a domain controller, and that's true, but I'm going to leave it on here because it works as part of the demo in the next lesson. And then we have the network security group. I'm not going to get into that a lot of detail right now. We're going to be covering network security groups in details in a future lesson, so I'm not going to put any extensions in, and I'm going to probably disable all the extra stuff since this is just a test. Now, one of the things that I should have mentioned more detail of is that when we looked at the different types of servers, I'm going to click Create here to get the server created. When we were talking about the different types of servers that you could choose, we saw, I believe, 3 or 4. There's certainly a lot more that you can choose besides those, and that goes back to planning. You should know exactly what kind of server you're going to need before you even get to that point. My general rule of thumb when deploying virtual machines is to Azure is to create the resource group first, then create the network and all your subnets, and then deploy virtual machines choosing the appropriate network or subnet. Yep, and there you can see the domain controller has been created, the virtual machine. So this took about 10 minutes to get done. I paused the video, but just so you know, it doesn't happen this quickly. We can go in and take a look at some of the settings. We'll click on networking, and you can see here the virtual subnet. We're in production network, virtual network, and the back-end subnet. There's our public IP address, and there is our private IP address. So that concludes this lesson. Just to review, we set up a virtual private network. We created 2 subnets, a back-end subnet and a front-end subnet, and set the proper IP address ranges. And then we created a virtual machine, a domain controller, and placed it in the back-end subnet. That's all for this lesson. Please join us in the next. Thanks.